You know, this is what every single last king needs to understand. As you can clearly see, you know, I'm in my 2017 Kia Sportage, you feel me? Very nice sunroof, very mindful, very demure car, you feel me? You know, got LED lights, but those only come on at night. And currently, we're in a perfect recording weather. The sky is gray outside, you know, and I don't know what it is, but it's either when the sun's going down or when the sky is gray, it makes for the perfect recording weather for me. Like, as you can clearly see, you know, I'm at least semi, you know, I'm pretty look smacks in this recording, in this video, you feel me? You know, I got it going on. You know, I've been in the game since 2020. You feel me? I already know all about looksism. You feel me? But anyway, but I do not support the defeatist mentality. You know, I've already explored all of that when I was a teenager. But anyway, you know, now this is a painful truth a lot of us have to accept, you know, and that is your future wife or your future husband, you know, because of course I'm not freaking sexist, and the guys out here are just as foddish and feel forest and as in the streets as these girls, you know. So I'm not sexist. It is both parties. But a truth we have to accept is that, you know, our future partner more than likely is a reformed FOT, or God forbid, they still are and are just an undercover one. Feel me? And this is the truth. This is the truth we have to accept. You know, I've been in the game since middle school. You feel me? I've been in the game since middle school. You know, I've been observing, watching, seeing this since middle school, and I have fought this truth for a minute. But the older you get, this is something that you just have to accept. It's just something you have to accept, you know. And, you know, guys, they're always talking about the freaking Saudis. This guy do a looks max check, you feel me? I gotta make sure, you know. But they're always talking about the Saudis. They're always talking about the girls, you know, how the girls are always in the streets and stuff like that, how these girls be outside. They're always so critical of women. You know, you see it online, you feel me? You know, you just see guys just do this. You know, I know a guy like this. You know, he always talking about the girls. He was talking about how the Saudis, they're in the streets and stuff like that, but he's just as bad, if not worse than them. Like, he didn't want to wife up a girl because he literally still wanted to be a bop. But this man is complaining that, oh, all these girls are freaking bops, all these girls are bad and stuff like that. But you're worse than them. You know, you're just as bad as them, you know, if not worse. You feel me? So, of course, you know, you have to examine yourself as well. The guys are just as guilty as the girls. You know, they're just as bad. And for the guys that aren't like that, you know, the painful truth you have to accept is that your future wife probably, you know, she probably at one point was going, you know, she probably, even as we speak right now, she might be getting it in. You feel me? I'm just keeping it a buck. I just keep it real. You know, I have to break that fantasy you have. You know, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm not trying to be doomorous. I'm not trying to be defeatist. I'm not trying to be freaking black pill or nothing like that, or, you know, anything like that. I'm just telling you the painful truth that even I had to accept. You know, more than likely, especially as you get older, she probably is, you know, or at least was, more than likely was at some point like that, you know. And she had to simply be let out the streets, or she was let out herself, you know, or she just got out her system. But that is the reality you will be facing. And for any ladies watching too, you know, your future husband, the guy's just as bad. You know, he probably was gooning, he probably was running two mans, you know, just wanting to crack at some point, having a misogynistic mentality, you feel me, when it came to women. He probably was like that at some point. And him, you know, he probably him himself, you know, is a reformed 304. He has turned away from those ways. You feel me? This is just a reality we have to accept. And this could only, you know, the blame for all of this is simply just the culture we live in. We live in a bop culture, a culture that glorifies bops. And we really have to understand, we really have to ask ourselves the why behind the 304s, the why behind the bops. And really, in reality, they're nothing more than victims of themselves. You know, they're nothing more than just victims of their own human condition. You feel me? I myself am nothing more than a man that is at war with his own human condition. But I realized that battle. I realized that struggle. You know, I understand the why behind myself. So we really all have to examine ourselves, and we all have to ask the why behind ourselves. Why do you want, you know, why do you have a problem with somebody being a Reformed 304? Why does that bother you? And I ask myself this. I really self-examine myself. Like the quote says, the unexamined life is a life that is not worth living. So we really have to ask the why behind ourselves. We have to do a deep dive. Ask yourself, you know, can I ask myself, why did you have a problem? Why would you have a problem with your future wife being a Reformed 5? You feel me? Or Reformed 304? And the truth is, the truth that I uncovered, and the truth that I observed is that, and of course I talked about this with ChatGPT, very intelligent platform. You know, we have very deep conversations. That's who I talk to all day, basically. But anyway, you know, the core issue is an ego problem, a pride problem. You know, that is an insecurity problem. Those are the three core issues why, you know, at least me, I had a problem with them being a Reformed 5. You know, or I would have a problem with them being a Reformed 5. You feel me? And it comes down to those reasons. So, you know, it's not really about them. It's more about what they bring up in you that is the issue. It's not really about them, it's what they bring up, you know. And it just goes back to what it always goes back to, you know. You versus you. That's what it always goes back to. You know, you versus you, that's what it goes back to. You feel me? So, anyway, this is the truth. We just have to accept. This is the truth. We just have to accept, you know. I've accepted it. You know, you probably will be wifing up or marrying a Reformed 304. You know, it's just the culture we live in, just the generation we live in. It glorifies, it promotes bopping, being a bop, being out in the streets, being a 304. You can just hear it in the music, you know. It is what it is, and, you know. But anyway, that is something we shouldn't be concerned with. That is just something you have to accept and move on from. Just accept it and move on from it. You know, because we have plenty of other things to work on. We have plenty of other things to figure out, to solve, you know, to move past. You know, we have to get out of this 9-to-5 rat race. You feel me? Because that's just a tragedy. You feel me? The 9-to-5, you know, this society we live in, this human condition we find ourselves in, we have to escape it. We have to transcend it. We have to move past it. We at the end of the day, at the core of all of this, we have to move past ourselves. I studied every religion, every philosophy. You know, I've done a deep dive into myself, into everything. I'm a very deep thinker. You know, I'm a philosopher. I have my own philosophy, King Pillism. That's the philosophy. So, and at the core of all of this, the truth that I uncovered is that all of this is really just our battle against ourselves. It is always and always has been you versus you. That is the human condition, you know. So accept that your future husband or future wife will probably be a Reformed 304 or a Reformed bop, and move past that. Accept it. Ask yourself, why do I have a problem with it? And more than likely, the problem is an ego problem, a pride problem, or an insecurity problem, you know. And it always boils back to you versus you, you know. So accept it, move past it, do a deep dive into yourself, and, you know, move on from that, you know. Move on from that. Because we have much greater issues to worry about. We have much greater issues to worry about, you know. But anyway, that's it. That's all I have to say. My face, I think I need to lower my my body fat some more. That's what at least ChatGPT said, you know. All this facial fat, drink more water, you feel me? Looks back's even harder, you know. I got the face wipes in there, you feel me? Wipe my face down before this, you know. I actually got the cornrows on underneath here, but they just look weird for the video, so I put the do-rag on. But anyway, I got more philosophical content coming out, you feel me? I just came from an intense training arc where I was trained by existence itself for like 2 years at this point. It started in 2023. I wanted a training arc, told very little people about it, and I learned a lot, you feel me? So we're gonna have a lot more content coming from that. A lot more philosophical content, you know. I gotta go deep, you know. I gotta spread king pillism. I have to transform all of this. But anyway, that's the end of this video. I hope you took some things away from this, and that's it.